let's get on over to the running backs again, looking at those big spreads. The biggest ones being the Cowboys and the Bills and the 49ers. The 49ers run game, very intrigued by, as everybody should be. Kyle Shanahan produces monsters in that zone scheme. But otherwise, not interested in Bills, not interested in Bucks. It's going to be too widely spread. Now let's look at the points against as well. Short lines, getting those 49ers guys, the most points allowed to running backs. Texans, you got James Robinson, workhorse, maybe Carlos Hyde is like a Hail Mary. If you're really desperate for a running back, you shouldn't be this early, but maybe you want zero running back. I think Carlos Hyde could fit that bill. Jags on the other side of that, so maybe Ingram and Lindsey as Hail Marys as well. Too bad a couple gross backfields are getting some of the best matchups with the Jags versus the Texans there. The Raiders allowed a ton of specifically receiving work to running backs, so Gus Edwards could hit that ground running. Packers versus running backs was a joke, so Alvin Kamara should absolutely destroy them. Titans, so maybe Chase Edmonds gets out to a fast start against the Titans. Vikes were very generous to running backs. They did make a lot of defensive improvements this year, though. I think that's a defense that's going to be on the rise, a streamer defense I don't hate this week against the Bengals. They're fairly generous, though, so Joe Mixon could get off to a good start. You got the Bengals also on the other side, so Dalvin Cook have a day, kid. Panthers against the Jets, whatever. Jets running backs, bleh. And then you got your Cowboys were surprisingly generous. Not surprisingly, the defense sucks. Generous against the run. So just keep that in mind in terms of like the most difficult last year. Saints were really, really good, but Aaron Jones should eat either way. They lost a couple players as well. Steelers were good against everything, including running backs. The football team, that D-line is ferocious. So I don't really want to touch anybody in the Chargers. I mean, Eckler's different because he's such a receiver, but you're not trying to get cute with any other running backs there anyways. You're not going to bench Eckler, but it's not the ideal setup. The Bucks versus Zeke without one of his top linemen, that's going to be tricky. How do you rank those? David Montgomery out of the gates in a tough matchup against Aaron Donald. Pretty gross. Falcons, somehow decent against running backs last year. They were pretty sneaky generous as receivers to running back time, but they're much more pass susceptible with one of the worst. What are they? They're the worst team secondary? Yeah, Atlanta Falcons, the worst secondary in the league. Again, for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is going to go nuts in week one. But let's get this going. I think Kamara against Green Bay is my number 2 back this week. But you can rank all 4 of these guys in the top 4. Henry, not a tough matchup. How was the Cardinals? Middle of the pack. So nothing too scary there for Henry. It doesn't really matter for Henry. I do think is Seattle, were they? I'm just going to kind of keep checking backs, middle of the pack as well for Seattle. I think Mixon against Kansas City was sneaky generous to running backs, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, number 11, and they're going to want Chubb. I'm going to bump him up. Yeah, I get the game flow. Could be a concern if they get down early, but they're going to do their best to have Chubb get an early lead, continue to pound him out. So I like Chubb a bit. I like Mixon more than Jones. I do like Aaron Jones, but I think against the very tough New Orleans defense, the fewest points allowed to running backs last year, that makes me a little bit nervous. Maybe even Najee Harris. I think we're going to see a huge coming out party for Najee Harris, similar to Antonio Gibson. How are the Chargers against the run? Middle of the pack in terms of points allowed to running backs. I do, as I said, James Robinson, RB1 season. You told me James Robinson next year was facing last year. The James Robinson, number RB7 last year, was getting the worst run D in the league, and he'd be bottom 10. I think he might need a little bit bump up into his top 10 here. Big fan of James Robinson coming up as a bona fide RB1 this week. I think Mostert needs a little bit more love. Not above Zeke necessarily, even though the one thing working in Zeke's favor is Tampa Bay gave up a lot of receptions to running backs, and I think he'll still be their guy. I am a little nervous of Eckler coming out week 1, but he's as a receiver, he's doing his damage anyways. Nothing about Indy scares me too. I mean, Darius Leonard scares me, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, 21st, not horrible, but that game's going to be a points factory. Gus Edwards against the Raiders, a very generous run D. Saquon, I'm nervous against here. I think Denver was pretty good. Oh, actually not against running backs last year. But they, again, have made a ton of moves And they're already talking about reduced workloads for Saquon. So he makes me nervous this week. He does. What about Philly? I feel like they're like always okay against the run. Yeah, 22nd. They usually have a beastly D-line. I'm not a Clyde's fan. How are the Browns? And they added linebackers, D-linemen. I can't spell. Yeah, 26. So they were not very generous. He's less than fully healthy. I'm not into him. Let's kind of tier these out. So these are going to be like your low-end ones, high-end twos. Swift, I'd have a hard time. Give me Harris. I think Harris is going to roll. I'll bump him up to running back 19. I think running back 18. They're going to steamroll. I think Miami, nothing overly special. That's 23. Like that better than I expect, but this team's just going to play bully ball all year. I think Gaskin. I think the Pats are going to swallow them up. Call me an optimistic Pats fan, but really lower on Clydesdale this week. Let me see him fully healthy. Let me see him getting goal line work. Let me see what Jerick McKinnon's role is. If I can bench him, I think I want to. From here, this is where it gets really tricky in these rankings, folks. This is tough. So, and again, keep your questions coming in. As I said, I'll get to all of them at the end. I'm not ignoring you guys, promise. I appreciate you guys sticking here with me this long as I sift through the process. It's not as easy doing his live as you'd think. I think Sony Michel gets a bump above a lot of these guys. I'm not a Moss guy. So let's kind of sift through some of this. I think Connor has sneaky high TD upside. I mean, the Titans were one of the worst run Ds last year, right? Yeah. So like Edmonds, Connor, Javonte. How were the Giants? They were good against the pass. Were they good against the run? Right in the middle of the pack. So how's that backfield going to shake out? Kareem Hunt. It's tough to be that high on Chubb and be, much higher on Hunt either. But even if Chubb has a big early game, and what did Chubb in the playoffs? Didn't he have like 150 and 2 TDs against them in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken? He'll steamroll. But Hunt should still be involved as a pass catcher too. It's tricky. I feel Chicago's always a tough D. What do they rank? Yeah. I'm not a big Henderson fan. This might be one of the rare weeks where, like Ronald Jones, I actually don't hate putting him in there. But I would go Javonte over him and give Javonte a little bump up. They gave this guy the rest of like a starter in the preseason. They probably are going to let this guy rip it right from the start, especially against a crap Giants team. They'll get up early and feel comfortable riding their horse. I don't hate that. Trey Sermon, though, I could see this one being just a blowout. They go and get their rookie going. Like if I had to pick one or the other, I kind of like Trey. Not a fan of Jacobs. Like they're going to get down early, and that's going to be a Kenyon Drake type of script, in my opinion. Let's call this tier here. Melvin Gordon is so tricky because he is a good player, 3-down skill set, but far from a guarantee. I really think Connor has like 2 touchdown upside. I'm going to bump him into here. Am I nuts? Like maybe these guys, Swift and Hilaire, belong a tier above. Just because Hilaire isn't such a good offense. I'm really nervous about Swift tomorrow, though. Guy hasn't played all preseason. He's not in game shape. Yeah, he's healthy, but like I'm probably fading Swift. So let's let the rankings kind of reflect that. This seems about right so far. Well, let's get down here. Who could be playable in this gross? I mean, I know I'm not touching David fucking Johnson or Michael Carter. like Tevin Coleman, Hail Mary time. The Panthers were historically bad, right? Like Carolina. I guess they got better as the year went on, but they were atrocious last year. Coleman, the starter, shot out of a cannon, they're saying. I think he deserves a little more love. Sony, I think, is going to be that de facto goal line back. Again, lower on Henderson. I'm not into Henderson this year. Could be dead wrong, but he's never looked that good. I don't care about his number 1 PFF grade for like 2 weeks. He's never been that good. Who else? I don't hate Ty Johnson. Carolina. I think that game's going to be a sneaky points factory. What was the over-under on that one? Because I'll probably hammer the over. Let's go to that. Jets. Yeah, 44. I think that's going to go over. That's way too low. I think Ingram, like David Johnson, is well below Ingram and Lindsey. Where's Lindsey here? Yeah, I think like these guys, I think James White, he always puts in like a week 1 touchdown. It's just tradition. So I wouldn't be opposed to having him in my lineup. Do think Lindsey has some upside. Dylan maybe plods in for a touchdown. But I do think Ingram also carries some upside. McKissick, good pass catcher, more usable than Dylan or Singletary, like off the bat. I don't like Bills running backs. I don't like Zach Moss as a player, as a human. I don't want much to do with him. Fournette, I don't know what to do with that backfield either. But again, 8.5-point favorites. They could be bleeding clock. These are kind of like my last you could consider for your lineup type guys. I think Hines gets a little bump. I've been a little too low on Hines this offseason. I think Gordon belongs in the tier above too. He could just be the de facto guy, and we'll check the notes and look for that. Down here, I think Bernard as like a Hail Mary belongs significantly higher. I'm just going to kind of pick out any names. Wouldn't be surprised to see Ramondre like steamroll right from the start. Boston Scott, way too undervalued. Like there's definitely some usable guys deep down this list. So I'll have a bunch of Hail Mary streams for you guys, it seems like, tomorrow. I think Tony Jones is going to get more involvement than this gives him credit for. Man, it's top 10 in accuracy for rankings plenty of weeks last year. This is a tough week 1, though. This is coming at you hard. I don't think there's going to be much else to see. Most of these guys are going to get the X. So anybody left on this list that I should be higher on, maybe Tyson, just because I don't think Bell. I think Bell long-term is going to hurt this guy. But for right now, and let's get Ingram above the crap from the Bills. Just stay away from the Bills backfield. No need to do it. Alrighty, guys, that gives us our running back rankings. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.